Hello, it's Dr. Darnise. Welcome back to Dr. Darnise's religion class. And in this episode, I'd like to talk to you about the difference between institutional religions and this other kind of practice called magic. So let's see where we go with that. Now, as I've mentioned before in another video about folk religions, folk practices, and traditions, these typically stem from religious practices and maybe break off sometime. So hang in with me because we'll work out a few things here. The idea around magic is that human beings have innately power. We are energetic beings. We are vibrational beings. We come from the Creator and we have our own intuition, which guides us. We have our own emotional system, which guides us. And we have the ability to change or alter our circumstances in the physical world. If we have the knowledge of the universe, we have the actual ability to manipulate our environment. We have the ability to mix things together and get a response that we want. Like I've mentioned before, we have a knowledge of herbs which are medicinal or which are poisonous, and we know how to use them. We know what kind of minerals and rocks and crystals have certain energy that feed us, right? We come to recognize the power in nature, basically. Now you'll say, what do you mean, the power in nature? Well, water has power, right? We call it hydraulics. We have there's an understanding that our universe, our world is electric, right? Why did the electric company charge us money for something like electricity, which is already present around us? Because they harness it and focus it towards us so we can use it in our lives, in our households, right? So we have to pay the electric company for that. But really, it's a force in nature. So when we get to know who we are, when we really get to know who we are as people who are created by, the God force, which has imbued all of us with power, then we feel good about ourselves from another perspective and our religions look different. Our practices look different. Different from what? Different from the institutional kinds of religions. In the systems of magic or um, pre Christian religions, pre Islamic, pre Judaic for that matter, where people were working with nature, I guess I'll just call them nature based religions. Those people understood that they could do something with the materials of nature. And from another point of view, from an onlooker, it might look like that person was a witch. They use the word witch, right? And made it negative. Oh, that witch over there, we have to burn her, we have to drown her, we have to get rid of her because she's doing something bad or evil. Who says that? The people who come with the institutional religion who says all of the power should be within me, the institution, the Christian body of believers. So the Catholic Church, for example, says all of the power comes here to the church. If you want to participate in the life of God, you as an individual have to come to me, the church, and to the people I establish as being in authority. Right? So you understand, like in systems of nature-based religions and magic, if we use that word, the power lies with the individual. The power lies with the people. In institutional religions, the power lies with the institution. And so the people kind of line up and follow what the church, what the institution says to do. They say, I need this amount of money. You say, okay, I make a donation. They say, these are our legitimate scriptures. Only read these. We say, okay. We say this is the proper way for you to dress. We say okay. We say this is the appropriate way to have relationships. We say okay. Why? Because the church said, pastor said, father said, sister said, right? And then you start thinking about it. Well, why am I doing that? Because they seem to hold the power of access to God. They seem to have all the power, the access to God. And so we say, okay, well, then I guess I need to affiliate myself with the people who have access to God. And because they're in closer contact with God, so to speak, I have to do what they say is legitimate and valid. And I have to stay away from whatever they say is illegitimate and not valid. If they tell me that my own practices from my people, from my heritage, is wrong and demonic, then I have to start letting that go. If I can't manage to mix it together some kind of a way, I have to let that go. Now, what we're seeing, interestingly, in 2017 is this emergence or fascination, maybe, where many people are so tired of the institutional churches. We know that membership in Christian churches, mainstream Protestant Christian churches, has really taken a nosedive over decades now. And for a long time, people were saying, "Well, I'm not religious. I'm spiritual." What does that mean? And it meant a lot of things for a lot of different people. Some people are like, oh, I'm agnostic, I'm atheist, I don't even believe anymore because the churches are corrupt. Those ministers just want your money. And so they've just left, religion altogether. Now, what we're starting to see is that people are rediscovering these folk practices. And how do I know that? I mean, one, there are all kinds of articles about it and books about it, but our popular culture is showing us that also. Things that show up. What is the name of that show? American Horror Story, something like that. I don't watch it, but I'm told, they do the whole series on witchcraft, and there's all of these things about Harry Potter and mysticism and magic. Um, People have been caught up in the vampire lore for, since, I don't know, the beginning of time. I mean, how old is Dracula as a story? Before Dracula, the Nosferatu. I mean, these ideas have been in our consciousness forever, and now that we see our popular culture reflect that back to us, we know, okay, people are still hungry, people are spiritually hungry. Where are they going to feed that hunger? They're going to reach out and explore things. And what's interesting to me as a person, as a religion scholar, is this turning one's attention once again to the folk traditions. And I'm particularly interested in the African traditional. I'm particularly interested in the conjure and the hoodoo because that's what African American people created here in the Americas as a result of mixing or clashing with white Americans and their idea about what religion is and should be. But the remnants of African traditional religion that they were able to hold on to shows up in these things called conjure and hoodoo, and we still have that. So I'm interested in those things because I'm interested in the creative ways that Black people were able to do that here in the US, really the American South. Now we're seeing a return to that form of it, as well as an interest in the actual African religions such as Ifa or Vodun, where people go and actually study those religions and become initiated in those religions and practice them as religions. I'm not so much following that stream, although I'm interested in it. It's a matter of time, right? But I'm interested in the way regular, ordinary African Americans mixed together what they had to mix together for survival and for survival of their spirituality in the American South. That's just me as a scholar. That's kind of what I'm interested in right now. And that interest has led me to making these kind of videos about my religion class. It's led me to want to share more in depth about what are these practices, not just to talk generally, like I've been talking rather generally about these practices. My intention is to start taking you deeper into individual practices. So something like candle magic, something like how to set up your altar, different kinds of altars, even what are the different kinds of altars, you know, how are people making use of those? What is a crystal altar? How do you use crystals? How do you use herbs? Those are the kind of topics that you'll see coming from me next, because I'm sharing my enthusiasm for these things as I find out about them, and as I have my own altars as well. So I've created in my home, I've created a number of altars, one being my ancestor altar. And so I will show you that on another video. But just to wrap this one up, my point here is to talk about, you know, what's the difference between magic and religion. Magic is where the power lies within, and there's an understanding that as a human being created by the divine, I have power, right? And therefore I'm able to do things in my environment. I'm able to make use of the forces of nature for my benefit. And there's nothing wrong with that. Religion says we as the institution have all the power. Come to us for it, come to us for the access to the divine. So that's what it is. I'd love to hear back from you. So in the comment section below, leave me a comment, and that's all for now.